And that's our cue. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Garner Town Council regular meeting on November 4th, 2024. It's a beautiful fall day in Garner. We're all happy to be here. We're all excited about a lot of things tonight. And we'll start with asking our town clerk to call the roll. Here. He will be here in about 20 minutes, I understand.
Here.
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 He will not be here. We'll come back to that. So that got us covered there. In fact, I need a motion from one of our council members to make this an excused absence for Damian Dellinger. He had a little health issue for today.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
There's a motion and a second to make this an excused absence for Councilman Dellinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Passes unanimously. And at this point, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. And since Damien's not here, I'll ask you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. And for the invocation today, I'd just like to give you a positive thought for the day, if you will. We all know what tomorrow is. It's election day. We're elected officials. None of us are running this year. That's the good news. And we don't want to be involved in the kind of very, very dramatic politics we've had so far. It makes us grateful for our little unaffiliated, non-denominational, ecumenical jobs that we have here. But it also makes me worry when people are so concerned about the outcome. They're anxious, they're confused, there's a lot of anxiety. Some people say, well, this is the most divisive the U.S. has ever been. Will we survive? And I'm here to testify, yes, the United States will survive. 60 years ago, when I was coming along about to vote, we had more divisive times. It was civil rights, it was the war in Vietnam, things that divided our country even more harshly than now. And 100 years before that, you heard about that little Civil War thing back in the 1860s where we killed 500,000 of each other. Way more divisive. The United States has survived all of those things. All of those things. We will survive no matter who wins this election. The United States will survive. They will thrive in the long run. Garner will survive and thrive. And my one request to all of you, if you have not voted, please go vote. I think the turnout has already surpassed a typical election just with the early voters, with the number of voters. But get out there and vote. Support America. America will survive. Thank you. And now we'll move along and see if we have any petitions or comments. And it's also always helpful to kind of read this. This portion of the meeting is to receive comments from the public on items not included in this agenda regarding matters germane to town policies or business or subjects within the town council's real or apparent jurisdiction. Individuals or group spokespersons must sign up with the town clerk prior to the start of the meeting. The council is interested in hearing your concerns, but will not take action or deliberate on subject matter brought up during the petitions and comments section. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate town officials or staff and may be scheduled for a future agenda. And I'm going to ask our town attorney if anyone has signed up to speak in this portion.
No one has signed up for petitions and comments this evening.
Okay, good. So we'll move right along. The next item on our agenda, as you can see, is item E, and this is for the adoption of the agenda. We've had a chance to look at this for several days. I'm going to ask our council member, is there a motion to adopt our agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Singleton, I think, and second by Councilman Matthews, that we approve the agenda. All council members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Thank you, that passes unanimously. And now for one of my favorite parts, the presentation. And somebody gets to do it other than me, but it's about something that's very close to my heart. It's about declaring the month of November as Hunger Action Month. And I'm going to call on Mr. Grace Singleton, who's been an active supporter of this movement and personally involved in so many ways. I'd like to pass this along, if you would read the proclamation that we're going to issue.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Designating the month of November 2024 as Hunger Action Month in Garner, whereas 1 in every 6 children in the state of North Carolina is food insecure, whereas there are 213,890 individuals who live in a food insecure household in Wake County and the 10 total local counties served by the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. Of those 213,890 individuals, 72,290 are children and 69,807 are senior citizens living at or below the poverty level. Whereas in the town of Garner, over 50% of the children who attend a Garner area public school would qualify for free or reduced price lunch subsidy program, and those same children may possibly go without a hot breakfast or lunch in the 185 days that school is not in session. Whereas there are multiple faith and civic organizations in the town of Garner who mount individual year-long efforts to fight hunger in our community, including but not limited to Community of Hope Ministries, Angie's Restaurants, Butterball LLC, Garner Midday Rotary Club, the Capitol Church, Garner Area Ministries, Juniper Level Baptist Church, the Poole Family YMCA, Turner Memorial Baptist Church, Backpack Buddies, and Meals on Wheels. Whereas food supply chain issues are significant inflation have plagued food pantry and food resource outlets, placing financial pressure on those locations to continue to be able to afford to provide high quality and consistent access to nutritional items for families in need. Whereas food pantries have documented a 70% increase in the cost of purchasing groceries over the last year to protect food inventory supplies. Whereas the residents of Garner are generous people who, through both private and public efforts, share their abundance to join hands and hearts to fight against hunger. Whereas on this 4th day of November in 2024, a group of interested citizens and business leaders will gather at the Community of Hope Ministries in the gymnasium at First Baptist Church in Garner to participate in the No Lunch Lunch, a soup kitchen style lunch offering only a bowl of soup and a roll to its guests. Whereas at this No Lunch Lunch, Community of Hope has elevated the awareness of real and present food insecurity issues that are facing Garner's most challenged families. Now therefore, Buddy Gutman, the mayor of Garner, does hereby proclaim in November 2024 as Hunger Action Month in Garner in recognition of all of the efforts already offered by many individuals, faith and civic groups, and businesses to eliminate the hunger in the Garner community, and all of the efforts in the coming few weeks that will be dedicated to helping families experience temporary relief from the stress of poverty during the coming holiday season. And Mayor Gutman does hereby encourage our town and its residents to join hands, hearts, and resources to eliminate food insecurity in our community. Signed by the Mayor of Garner, Buddy Gutman.
Thank you very much. Any other council members want to make a comment or an observation?
Just a comment. It's great that our town comes together for this thing. We are one big family in Garner, and people say, well, what if I live somewhere else? I said, you exist over there. You live in Garner, and that's why everybody wants to come here. And I think it's a great thing. I know Amy's sitting out here, and it's a big thing with her and Backpack Buddies and everything that was aforementioned there, that hunger is a bad thing. But we're in Garner, we're certainly stepping up to do our part to make sure nobody goes hungry. And we will keep that up, I'm sure. And thanks to all those that are stepping out there and making it happen. And this council most certainly supports them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Several years ago, my daughter participated in a Young Ambassadors program, and we were paired with a family from Cary to go through the activities there. And one of the parents said to me one time, said, how do how do you do this in Garner? How do you come together and work like this? This would never happen in our town. I invited her to move here and we would show her how. But Garner is a community that doesn't talk about it, we do it. And that is something we can be proud of, and we want to continue to support that in any way we can.
Thank you very much. And we don't usually ask for applause in these meetings, but I think we should give a big round of applause to all of the organizations, all of the people. Thank you. This is indeed the time of the year to be thankful and to think about the holiday spirit and to thank all of our community members who do so much to help all of this. That being said, we'll move along to the consent agenda, and anybody who needs to go fix some meals or be prepared for tomorrow, we understand completely. The consent agenda is only 2 items tonight. These are items that have been looked at in detail by staff and council members over the last couple of weeks, and there's only 2 of them on there. So if any council member wishes to remove any item from the consent agenda, we can do that. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Singleton and seconded by Mr. Matthews. All council members in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, that's unanimous. Those pass. And now we move along to the exciting part of tonight. This is the audience participation part. Sometimes this is the public hearing. We have 3 of those tonight, and I'll think it's a good idea to read the standard introduction here to remind us what this is about. Tonight's public hearings for annexations and rezonings are legislative hearings which do not require sworn testimony. However, persons interested in speaking, including the applicant, must sign up with the town clerk. Town staff will present a brief presentation followed by the applicant, and other persons who wish to comment on the item will be recognized to speak. Council requested groups of individuals with the same position to designate a representative to speak for the group. So that being said, we have 2 that are interesting tonight in terms of process. I'll go ahead and kind of try to explain this up front. We have 2 different projects that, number 1, are going to ask to be annexed so that the town of Garner can officially do the rezoning and that things necessary for them to move ahead. And of course, annexation means that these 2 projects, these 2 areas, would become part of the town of Garner at some point. They would be subject to property tax. They would be subject to be able to get the water and sewer that we partnered with the city of Raleigh or Raleigh Water about. So that's 1/2 of the public hearing. They also will be here for the 3rd phase of examination about the rezoning of these 2 different projects. Both of these projects have been counseled before for the public hearing about the rezoning. They have been through the planning commission and are coming back tonight at a later part of our program called New and Old Business, which are not public hearings. So what we're going to do with each of these is have a public hearing on the annexation, but in each case, we're going to make a motion probably to delay further action on that annexation question until we hear the rest of the story about the rezoning. So it may sound a little redundant, it may be a little confusing, but before we can do a rezoning, we have to annex the property. So we'll kind of have separate hearings. We won't take action. We'll come back after the rezoning one by one and address that issue, address that part of it. Okay. So we'll start out tonight with a very exciting project, Gateway 540, and I'm going to call on our planning director, Mr. Jeff Triesenberg, to give us the overview related to the annexation. And again, we'll come back later to talk in more detail about the rezoning itself. Mr. Triesenberg.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public. Yes, tonight we have 2 annexations for you to consider. The first is ANX 24003, which is the annexation for the Gateway 540 proposed project at the southeast corner of the new 540 highway and Benson Road, as seen here. The property is just a little bit over 97 acres. And again, we are asking you just to consider this for the public hearing at the moment. to go ahead and consider closing the public hearing. Once you hear any potential comments, if there are any, we will then ask to have the decision on this case deferred, and we will prompt you for a reminder when the zoning case comes up to remind you to make a vote on the annexation at that time. So if you do have any questions about just the annexation case at this point, I'm happy to answer any of those, and the applicants are here as well.
Okay, does the applicant want to make a presentation at this point? Okay, well, let's hit that part, then we'll see if we have questions for either of you there.
Sure thing. Evening, Mayor, members of council. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group here on behalf of the applicant. Just want to say we're here available to answer any questions, and we look forward to chatting with you all when we get to the zoning section of your agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That being said, I'll call on our town attorney to see if any individuals have signed up to speak on this matter.
The only other individuals who signed up are members of the development team who are here to answer questions if necessary. So no members of the public have signed up for this public hearing.
Okay, well, at this, now I'll ask our city council members here, do you have any questions at this time for either our planning director or the applicant?
I don't.
Okay, that being the case then, probably I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to ask council members, is there a motion to defer this action until after the presentation and discussion on the rezoning?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Behringer, second by Mr. Singleton, that we defer action on this item until after the presentation related to the rezoning. Those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. We will defer further discussion on that one. But while you're up, Mr. Triesenberg, while you're right there, we'll ask you to give us the same overview, if you would, on the voluntary contiguous annexation petition related to the Parkway Drive.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second case is ANX 24002, 42311 Parkway Drive. This is adjacent to the development known as the 401 Exchange that is currently under development. They acquired this parcel as part of the transaction for all the rest of the parcels that make up that development. They are in need of a second point of access to satisfy fire response requirements. There is going to be one existing access point here at what is called Fosterton Cottage Way. But then there is a Neuse River buffer stream that cuts through the property from west to east. So this property, again, in order for us to continue to monitor the fact that it is just being used as a fire access in emergency cases only, the town attorney, the legal office has advised us that we should annex this piece and zone it accordingly. So there is, again, a corresponding zoning case with this that you will hear later on in this agenda, GZ 24001. This is a very small parcel. It's just 0.28 acres. And again, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, just like the last case, we will recommend that you conduct the public hearing, hear from anyone, close the hearing, and then defer action until we prompt you later on during the rezoning case for a vote on this.
Okay, does the applicant wish to add to the presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Beth Blackman with Simmons Group, professional engineer, 5410 Trinity Road, Suite 102 in Raleigh. Yeah, so Pulte Home Company owns this parcel. It was purchased as part of the Exchange at 401 subdivision. And as part of the original PRD zoning for the subdivision, we came up with a solution, as Mr. Triesenberg mentioned, to solve our access issue with a secondary point of access, just as a fire access here. And so we have worked with staff on a design, worked with the staff and the neighbors in Brookwood for a grassed, but fire-rated supported emergency access. And so that's all that the parcel is going to be used for. It's very, very tiny and really nothing much besides this 20-foot access fits on it. We will be gating it with a Knox box to prohibit usage other than by emergency services. And as Mr. Trusenberg mentioned, the town submitted a rezoning for it. So that case is coming up later, so we're happy to add more to our conversation then or now. And Mr. Chris Raleigh with Pulte Home is here as well if you have any questions for either of us.
Thank you
So,
very
thank you.
much. Thank you very much, and I'll ask our council members at this point, do you have any questions for the applicant or for Mr. Treasenberg?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to apologize for being a little late this evening, but I have no questions.
Thank you. Questions for these two? Okay, I'll
Thank you.
ask our town attorney if we have anyone, any individuals signed up to speak on this topic.
Yes, Jack Powell.
Yes, if you would come to the podium and introduce yourself, name and address.
Good evening, Mayor Gupton and the council members, and I think maybe some people from Pollute Corporation are here. Thank all of y'all for being here. I'm Jack Powell, citizen of North Carolina. I've been a resident in Brookwood subdivision and property owner for 40 years. Brookwood Drive crosses and intersects Parkway Drive a couple of times, 3 times in fact, as it meanders through our subdivision. Our subdivision has a register of deeds covenant. It says that only lots are to be used for building residence. There had been a neighborhood meeting earlier this year about this, which I attended. There was another meeting y'all had here. I was out of town and was not able to be here. I thought I was going to be apprised by somebody in the county or the city or the people involved about what was going to be done with this property once it be, when and if it's accepted by Garner. Now, I'm an old retired North Carolina small-time general contractor, and I'm not against progress. I believe in it very greatly. It's been my livelihood. What's good for the goose is also good for the gander. I'm concerned, I understand now that if your people do approve this lot to be a fire lane or to become part of Garner's property, a fire road lane, an emergency lane is going to be put through there. I'm not opposed to that, but I think it should be, I want to state, it should be a two-way emergency situation, because Brookwood has similar problems which Pollute apparently and the fire department see for its subdivision. We've had our street blocked by automobile accidents. We've had it blocked where we couldn't get in and out because people were trying to come in with very large trailers with equipment on them, and one time a house. My wife was even the victim of it once, trying to get back from the grocery store, and she had to park at the bowling alley, and by the time she got to the house, well, it's summertime, some of the groceries spoiled. And we have a very dangerous hill to secondary roads people don't take care of. So it'd be ideal if there is a serious emergency in Brookwood that we would have access to this proposed emergency right of way through there. Call it a fire road, call it what you want it, but I think should be more than just fire trucks. It should be for any kind of EMS vehicles, and possibly even if there's a long-term issue problem getting in and out of Brookwood Drive, maybe we would have access to get in and out also. So those are some questions maybe you can't answer tonight. Maybe you're only, I think possibly y'all are going to deliver a decision tonight about whether Garner has accepted the property or not. I have no objection to Garner accessing the property. I have some questions about what it's going to be used for as far as development zoning is concerned for it. I would like there to be an emergency access there if it's a two-way situation where it's going to benefit Brookwood subdivision and the Pollute subdivision. That sounds like a win-win situation to me for everyone. I also am an outdoors advocate, and of those things besides hunting and fishing, I like riding a bicycle, and I have utilized a lot of the greenway trails in the city of Raleigh and in other places in Wake County where city of Raleigh has ownership of the properties of them. And I think they are a wonderful blessing to the community. And I think there's a long-term plan that someday, way in the future, there's going to be a parkway up Swift Creek, possibly from Garner all the way to Lake Wheeler. I've seen on the iMaps that the city of Garner, for one entity, owns property at the end of one of Brookwood's streets. there's another street, Brookwood, called not Eastover, but Woodnell Drive. There's a Woodnell Lane that runs down into the woods along Swift Creek, and it butts into some City of Garner property that you have acquired. It'd be an ideal corridor to bring the Greenway right on up to Brookwood, on Brookwood Drive, and go through this fire lane. So it'd be my recommendation and request, if you do accept it, that this track, this lot is fairly wide. It's wide enough for more than just a fire truck. That it be divided into two pieces so that one half of it could connect Palut's property and Brookwood's property for the fire truck emergency access, and the other half of it be saved for a future greenway, and not put the fire road right in the center of it, where then the little bit of property that's on each side is not useful to anyone. So I would hope that that has been considered or is being considered. The memo that I see here tonight doesn't show anything except, I guess, maybe there's going to be an announcement if you have accepted the property.
And that's about the 3
I think
minutes.
that's all the comments I have to make tonight,
Okay.
and maybe, who should I follow up with?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Powell. You make
I
some
don't
good
want to tie up
points.
y'all all tonight. There's a lot of people here needing to speak, so.
Yes, well, thank you very much. Those are good points, and some of those points may be addressed in the more detailed hearing coming up about the rezoning itself. You may get an answer to some of those things as we go through that part of the discussion.
All right, so I will add that two of our neighbors, Mr. Larry Ward and Mr. Bruce Whitman, have had quite a bit of contact, or some contact, and I think maybe they weren't pro se. I think they did have an attorney who was maybe talking with Palut's people about this, but in the last couple of months, everything's been silent. We, as citizens in Brookwood, my neighbors, immediate neighbors that I've talked to, no one has received anything in writing about this, what's being planned or being done, or what's proposed, or what's going to happen, except it's supposed to be Garner and Palut wants to have maybe I think it's the Garner Fire Department, is my understanding, is demanding they have a second entrance off of 401 in case of emergencies in their subdivision. It's a fairly nice, large, modern subdivision that's being built there, and it probably deserves two entrances. They didn't get planned evidently in the survey and plot plan layout that exists currently today. So now the fire department, I understand, is trying to force them to utilize this piece of property, which they have fairly and contracted the deed to utilize it for a fire lane.
Okay, thank you very much.
So-
And that's a little over our
So I'm
3
trying to
minutes.
find out what, if I don't know what Mr. Ward and Mr. Whitman have ever found out, they haven't shared it with any of the rest of the people in Brookwood subdivision. And the rest of the people are pretty concerned about it, although some of them didn't
Okay,
volunteer to come tonight.
thank you very
And
much.
we'd
A
like to know
little
who
bit,
we should-
little bit
who
over
we
our
should
three.
direct their comments
A
to.
little bit over our 3 minute time period that we'd like to go back twice that. You make some very good points, and I think many of your concerns will be addressed as we go into the more detailed discussion in just a few minutes here about the rezoning itself, that will address that. And if your questions are not addressed then, I would encourage you to stick around after the meeting, talk with the town manager, assistant town manager, planning director, and address some of those very important details. So thank you very much for joining us
I'll try to
tonight.
hang around to the very end, and I appreciate your time, and I'll also apologize. I'm an old man, and I forgot, in my hurry to get here tonight, I forgot to put my hearing aids in. So anybody who needs to talk to me, if you talk loud, I won't think you're mad at me. I will appreciate it.
Well, you're a man after my own heart, rides a bicycle and wears hearing aids.
Okay, I won't take up any
So-
more of your time right now. Thank you very much. for letting me speak.
Thank you, sir. I ask our town council member, do we have anyone else signed up to speak tonight?
Mr. Raleigh has signed up, who's with Pulte.
Oh, okay, with the applicant.
Yes.
Okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Chris Raleigh with Pulte Homes. I just wanted to make one point of clarification, and that is for the fire department access, it would be so that access could be going in both directions, like was just talked about. So it would provide access into Brookwood, and it would provide access from Brookwood into our subdivision, so both subdivisions can have a better emergency response. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. So you believe in the goose and gander theory, right?
Yes, sir, that's a good theory to stick by.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else signed up to speak?
No one else has signed up.
Okay. And if there's no further questions from council, I'm looking up and down, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Our recommendation is that we defer action on this item until after the presentation. They'll be coming with the zoning discussion. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Singleton, seconded by Mr. Matthews, that we defer action on this until later in the meeting after we've heard the detailed presentation on the zoning part of that as well. All in favor of accepting that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, that motion passes. We will defer that action until we get the more detailed presentation. Thank you very much. Moving right along to item number 3 under the public hearings is a Tier 1 conditional rezoning request for the Thompson Business Park 2. And we're going to call on our Assistant Planning Director, Aaron Joseph, to give us an overview. Then we will get some input from the applicant and citizens as appropriate. Ms. Joseph, give us the overview, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members, members of the public. It's always good to see you all. All right, I will present case CZ 22-07, also known as Thompson Business Park 2. The applicant, Ronnie Thompson, has submitted a Tier 1 conditional map amendment request to rezone 82.29 acres to light industrial conditional. The site is located along West Carner Road, about 1 mile south of East Tryon Road. The applicant has also narrowed the list of permitted uses to 35 out of a possible 41, and has also proffered conditions that address site design. Now, West Garner Road is a diverse corridor, as evidenced by the mix of zoning uses in the surrounding area. So currently, as I stated, the site encompasses 6 separate parcels. Within those parcels, you have the existing zoning district. It's split between light industrial conditional, neighborhood mixed use, residential 2, and residential 4 conditional. It also has an overlay district, the commercial highway overlay district. The bulk of the site is currently vacant. However, you do have at least 2 of those parcels that have commercial uses on them. Garner Road is a significant thoroughfare that runs through parts of Raleigh and Garner, providing a key route for local traffic. In 2003, NCDOT reported the last traffic count as 13,531 annual average daily trips along this portion of Garner Road, just south of Tryon Road. The applicant has proffered several conditions that speak to site design. And I'll just briefly go through the conditions. The first, outside of the permitted land use table, addresses lighting. So all lots adjacent to the existing residential lots within the Thompson Business Park shall prohibit floodlights. Also, the lights shall be full cutoff features, and they shall have a maximum height of 25 feet. Addressing landscape buffers, the lots that are adjacent to the residential developments shall include a perimeter buffer of a solid row of evergreen trees with a minimum height of 4 feet at installation. And these evergreen trees will grow together to form a screening hedge. Now, these evergreen trees will count toward the portion of the overall perimeter buffer requirement, although additional trees may be needed to ensure that required screening hedge. And they also have provided a list of specific plants to meet that condition. Number 4 addresses tree cover, and so they have committed to a minimum of 15% of the site shall be preserved for tree cover, and this condition shall apply to the property as a whole and not individual site plans. Also, they are committing to 5 acres of open space and or preserve tree cover along the northern boundary, and you see all of these parcel ID numbers on the screen. That really is to address and show you that these are the parcels that are referenced in this condition here. So there will be a 5 acre minimum of open space between these lots and the rest of the site. And this area also shall count toward the tree cover in the preceding condition. Well, currently, there was not a traffic impact analysis required because the expected number of trips generated from this site is less than the minimum requirements of a TIA. However, if it is determined at a later date, such as site plan review or special use permit, that a TIA is necessary, then it will be provided at that time. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting in December of 2023. They mailed out over 400 letters with 14 people in attendance. You do have that meeting information attached to your staff report. The maps on the screen give you an idea of what the land character type is for the site. In the mix, you'll see that it encompasses several. The blue is the employment center. The golden color is that neighborhood typology, and then the red is that retail center typology. And the development intensity is area to enhance. In reviewing this request with our comprehensive land use plan, there were 4 growth framework criteria that were determined to be applicable. 1 was modestly consistent, 1 modestly inconsistent, and 2 were split. And just to note that further, that the site encompasses the neighborhood and the retail character typology, which does not support light industrial zoning district. However, significant acreage of the site is supportive of light industrial and is aligned with the existing industrial uses nearby. And also further noting that the transportation choice is a pre-existing condition and therefore it did not result in the lowest rating given by staff. The land use and community character consistency, there were 8 criteria that were determined to be possible to meaningfully address. Staff gave 1 extra credit due to the site proximity to the core of Garner, where development will minimize expensive infrastructure expansion of investments and avoid the loss of rural areas for future development beyond the municipal limits. 2 criteria were modestly consistent, 1 split, 1 modestly inconsistent, and 4 were strongly inconsistent. Those 4 strongly inconsistent reviews were given because there was no written condition indicating any commitment at this point to green stormwater infrastructure, architectural cohesion of buildings, or placemaking features. Overall, consistency has not been realized, but with additional commitments that could address architectural standards and cohesion of buildings, placemaking features, green infrastructure, and et cetera, and also sensitivity to surrounding residential areas, staff may be able to support an overall finding of consistency. You do have that consistency review in your attached staff report. That concludes my presentation. The next steps would be to hear from the applicant. They have prepared a presentation this evening, so we will finish conducting and potentially close out the public hearing and refer the case to the Planning Commission for review of consistency and a recommendation, and then finally Town Council findings of reasonableness and a decision to approve or deny. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I am Collier Marsh with Parker Poe at 301 Fayetteville Street here on behalf of the applicants. And the applicants here are Ronnie and Scott Thompson. We have Scott Thompson in attendance today. Also have Keith Roberts and Beth Blackman with the Timmons Group. This is the Thompson Business Park. Some of you all may recognize that name because this is a project that's come before you in a slightly different form a few years back. And so today we're presenting what we view as a modest expansion of the approved zoning with a really complicated history that we have to sort through to explain why it's just a slight incremental change. But overall, it's an 82-acre site with a mixture of zoning that applies to the site today. But I think that the town's character typology map helps to kind of break down how the site is permitted today. The blue, an employment center, a large section of this property is zoned light industrial already, and that was the previous Thompson Business Park case that came here in 2018, approved in 2019. For reasons I'll get into, when this project was expanded, it actually necessitates bringing the entire property back into the fold in order to clean up the prior zoning history because the town's codes changed since that previous project was approved. But I did just want to leave the comprehensive plan up on the screen for a second, just to point out with this project, with it envisioned as a residential area to start, this is probably not going to end up as a slam dunk comprehensive plan wise. Now, we're never going to check every possible box when it was envisioned as a residential area, but our hope is that we can show you that what we're proposing makes a lot more sense here and actually fits a lot better with the surrounding area. So moving on to the history of the property. So we call it Part 1 and Part 2, although the entire property is before you for rezoning. So Part 1, outlined in red, was Thompson Business Park Part 1. That was rezoned in 2019. At the time, it was rezoned to the Service Business District under the old code. And under the old code, the Service Business District had an accompanying conditional use permit. And what that essentially did was it locked in a specific development framework within that land. It contemplated certain development intensity. Subsequently, the owners of Part 1 purchased the property to the north, what we're calling Part 2. They purchased that and looked, how can we develop this and how can we include it into the overall vision for this business park. They filed a rezoning application with the town. And again, before the UDO was changed, it was for the Service Business District. And it had the exact same conditions that were approved on Part 1. So the idea was same thing on Part 2. Now, one of the things that we learned, which I think we can show a little better here, if you look to where the two red arrows are, is that the best way to develop Part 2 and the least impactful way to develop Part 2 was not to get access directly through Part 2 to get to those two areas where the red arrows are shown. Instead, we've got some streams and some tree buffer around them. Why disrupt streams more than you need to? Why take down more trees than you need to? It made a lot of sense to get access to those two areas circled in green with the red arrows if you just go through Part 1. But what that meant is that we had to revisit the Part 1 rezoning because with that conditional use approval, it meant that you were only limited to a certain projected development intensity. And by adding that extra land, in theory, it's more development, in theory, it's more vehicles, it wasn't considered. So in working with staff, it was almost like an essay question as to how do you figure this out and kind of go through our textbooks and figure out how we break down this process to make it work. In doing all of this and kind of talking through those changes, the town's UDO then changed as well. So we had a project on the south that was the Service Business District, and it had three conditions. We had a pending rezoning application that was the Service Business District with three matching conditions. And then the Service Business District disappeared Part 1 was converted to the light industrial district, and then we had to convert Part 2 to the light industrial district and combine them. Ultimately, I realize it's a complicated history, but what you have in front of you is a very modest change to what's been approved. So the 2 areas where you have red arrows outlined in green, that will be the kind of expanded part of Part 1. That's kind of one area that we're seeking additional entitlement. The other area is the other section outlined in green closest to West Garner Road, where there are some existing businesses there today. That also is going to be added into this light industrial district. And so really we're just asking to add those little pieces onto what's already been approved, convert everything to the light industrial district to clean up the mess that we have. We've got the same 3 original conditions. Now we've actually, with permitted uses, taken a few more out, and then we've added 2 more conditions. The 2 conditions that we've added are meant to tell you that, again, this is a tier 1, so there's no plan that goes with it, to tell you that what we're showing as an illustrative here is what you're going to end up with. So a large part of the development of that Part 2 is all of that riparian area. So the streams, then we've got a large open space there. And so we've added 2 conditions to say, yeah, that's going to stay that way. We're going to have extra tree preservation. We're going to have 5 acres of open space in that northeast corner. That's our way of saying that what we were showing you is how it's going to be developed. In doing so, if we had gone with the comprehensive plans, neighborhood designation and residential, we probably could have packed a bunch of houses back in there and kind of developed that area a little better. But here we think it's just a better fit to keep the existing business park plan. Don't go back and develop the entire site. Keep some protected area to insulate those neighbors to our north. So getting to our proposed conditions, again, we had 3 approved conditions in the original rezoning, and that zoning's there today. Right now, that Part 1 is light industrial with 3 conditions, and it can be developed. In fact, there's street infrastructure there. They're eager to get tenants and get users out there, but we have to work through these details. Those 3 conditions were a permitted use table that was narrowed, and we had to convert that permitted use table to the new code and kind of find what matched and what didn't, cross them out. There are lighting conditions from that original rezoning that still apply. We've kept them in there. Those are things requested by the neighbors. The same landscape buffer that was approved by council has stayed in there with the evergreen row hedge that was important to the neighbors at that point in time. And then we added the 2 that I explained show the tree coverage and open space. And so this is the permitted use table. Again, that's our way of matching what service business allowed and trying to convert it to the light industrial district. And then the last slide is just kind of trying to illustrate those conditions we've added. So the green is meant to show the areas we envision as tree preservation. As we said, 15% of the site is the commitment. I think it's a conservative estimate, but you never know until you get into site plan. Similarly, 5% of open space. That was defined by parcel number, and it's actually a little kind of where our green line is drawn and over the parcel numbers we identified on the kind of front section of the property. I guess page left, we'll have that typical buffer, but we would have some planned development there. Ultimately, the vision here is just to have a business park. So we're thinking local businesses, plumbers, electricians. If we're lucky, we might get a little bigger user on one of the parcels, but it's going to be a couple parcel business park. With that, we've got members of our team that are here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And at this point, I'll ask council members if they have questions for the applicant or our staff about this particular project. We'll start with Mr. Matthews.
Not a question, just a comment. I do like all the buffer between there and the residential, and it's assured nothing's going to go there, especially being what it is. So, good point. So,
Thank you. Mr. Singleton?
My question is, the natural area and the streams make a large buffer for those residential lots. But then on the bottom, you talk about the evergreen shrubs, and those homes are much closer to, because it's tier 1, it's vague, we all know that because there's no specific site plan. And you offered up the evergreen shrubs that would be 4 foot and that would grow. That's just my biggest concern is we're putting light industrial right back there to the back of these residents here in Weston Ridge, and a substantial buffer, in my opinion, or a more substantial buffer, I'll rephrase that, should be applied because those homes are on small lots, and that's just my biggest concern is the distance, and because it's tier 1, it's unknown. That's a big concern. The second concern is you went from 41 uses down to 35, and I was thinking to be sure we can peel down 35 to less, because some of those when you're 35 don't look like what I think you're going to put there. Anyway, that's a concern also, is there's so many of the uses left. I mean, we had another one, Tier 1, the other day that had 41 uses, and they got down to 5. So that's called eliminating what's not going to go there. So my big concern is the buffer, particularly on those residents down here. Question. There is another site, it's not yours, a Habitat for Humanity project close by. Quiet Refuge Lane comes up. Now, at one time that was going to run through this property. Is that still going to happen or not happen?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to clarify that point. The far bottom right corner was originally, I think it's currently entitled as R4 for part of that Habitat for Humanity project. It's no longer coming to fruition, so it's not part of this project.
So the stub outs here will not be connected to in this project, correct? Or will they?
So I think this is the kind of, so we've superimposed the planned subdivision plan here. So there was not intended to be a connection directly onto the street. The connection was meant to be our internal driveway.
Okay, so in the part one, the previous form of this, there's no there's no stub out here to on the one to the left, and the right, so the Quiet Refuge Lane will not extend it, or will it be extended?
Good evening, members of the council. Mr. Mayor, Keith Roberts, 202 Bonica Creek Drive. Yes, Quiet Refuge Lane will stub into the Habitat for Humanity project. And we have worked with their engineers to make sure their street alignment meets our street alignment. So we will connect, and that will give them access through.
Okay, so that stub out will happen, Keith, and it'll be standard roads, built standards like everything, town standards as far as the road.
Correct.
Curb and gutter, sidewalk, whatever.
And if you notice, the business part has no access off Quiet Refuge Lane because that is a residential road.
Okay,
And
yes.
so we did not want truck traffic and, commercial traffic going through that neighborhood to get to the business park. So there is no access. So basically we actually paved that road last week. You can ride out there and look at it. It's built all the way to the property line. And, if you see it, there's no curb cuts, there's no we basically built a road to nowhere. As far as Thompson Business Park, that road has nothing to do with Thompson Business Park, other than the fact that we had to build it because it was part of their property.
Okay. All right, thanks for confirming that. I'll let others ask.
Well, and just to go back to something you mentioned about the neighbors to the south, the south side part one, that is an approved plan, development plan. It's under construction currently. Not knowing exactly what we were going to put out there, we did worst case scenario, and there is a 65-foot landscape buffer on the south side on the approved construction drawings, and we maintain that buffer through the construction to preserve 65 feet of existing vegetation. And that could get less depending on, when a site plan comes in, depending on what the use is, but not knowing what the uses would be, we just prepare for worst case scenario.
Okay, so if it became less, then would there be landscaping put in to
There'll be
to replace that?
Absolutely.
If you go into the 65-foot
Correct.
buffer, you would supplement the landscaping?
Correct. Each one will have to come in for site plan approval, and at that time, we will have to meet the landscape buffers depending on what that use is. And then we can supplement or use existing what's there. But again, we maintain 65 feet of what is currently there. And that's the same thing we're doing on the north too, is behind the two proposed commercial lots. That's a 65-foot buffer up there proposed.
And the one on the bottom, Keith, that came on the original plan was approved back a few years ago.
That's
that
correct.
65-foot buffer, okay. All right, thanks for reminding me of that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Other questions from council members?
I have a comment and a question. I'm a little bit concerned too that the list of possible uses was not reduced any more than it is. That's still quite a big range. And I realize this is tier 1, and so we're a long way from the finished product, but I just wanted to make that part of the record. And the other question I have is, do you know why Habitat is not building their community there?
As far as conditions go, really what we did there, we just went back to what was approved in 2019. We reduced it some from what was approved in 2019. So we were just really being consistent with what you guys had approved on part 1. But we could definitely look at, reducing it some more if we had to. Habitat, I've been in talks with them. They are planning on developing their parcel, which joins this parcel. The only thing that's changed originally in 2019, the backside, we rezoned this as R4 because Ronnie and Scott Thompson were talking to Habitat about selling them some of their property. So Habitat could actually expand onto theirs to build additional homes. But talks on that kind of broke down over time. So Habitat will not be expanding onto their property anymore. So we don't need that R4 zoning on the back corner. But right where we're stubbing, that is a Habitat project. And their engineer, they're working with Bass Nixon Kennedy, and they're working on that project as we speak. Robbie Bell and Marty Bizzle are working on that. And I've talked to Marty a lot about it. And so they're getting their numbers right. I think they've submitted some plans to the town for a site plan. Yes. So it is going to happen.
It's
and then
gonna
that way,
happen.
and then when they develop, then Quiet Refuge will be extended all the way out so that the neighbors in this neighborhood will have more than one way out to get out.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vance, questions, comments?
Oh, yes, just in reference to the consistency has not been realized yet, and understanding it's going to take more planning and discussion, and looking at the various architectural standards. Do you all believe that you'll be able to bring it into consistency, plan consistency?
I think so. I think currently the issue is we just don't know who the users are and what type of structures will be out there. But the intention, again, this has to come back in through site plan approval. And at that point, the architectural features will be looked at once we know more about what the users are going to be. The intention is, and Scott is here tonight, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, is they're planning on keeping most of this and building the buildings themselves and renting the spaces, like flex space type structures. But what I envision is anything within the thoroughfare up next to the road would have higher architectural standards and things that are built in the back. We just hadn't got to, again, what those users currently are.
Okay.
And as far as consistency goes, I want to reiterate again, I know the north side is shown as, future, residential, but Scott and Ronnie here, their thought behind all this is they just want to be good neighbors to the surrounding area. And this is the best way to be a good neighbor, because you can imagine, part one is approved, it's built. I mean, we're building that's done. So if they weren't done together and part two had to be residential, then that would be a high density residential with 2 or 3 buffer crossings, cutting down many, many trees. And currently, with the 5-acre open space and all the buffers, they're preserving about 23 acres of open space. And so it is a very, very low impact approach that they're taking here, which unfortunately makes it inconsistent, but it is a much better product for the area. And when, again, I was at the neighborhood meeting we had, and everyone there said they had rather see this than see a high-density residential behind their house.
And just one follow-up on the consistency. I think when you look at the inconsistency in the staff report, some of the I guess the bright red knocks were like placemaking and gathering areas and things like that. I don't think there's a likelihood that we're going to propose large gathering areas within this business park, so I don't think we're going to get consistent in that regard. Unless council feels strongly that those are appropriate for a business park, and we could consider it at that point. But in our view, we think a more successful employment center will be kind of focused on those employment uses. Architecture-wise, we can certainly look into it and evaluate it. Want to make sure we understand what's important, but the goal is to have some level of flexibility to be able to attract the right users here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I'll ask our town attorney here, have any individuals signed up to speak?
Yes, Marcia Timmel.
Yes, thank you. Pull the microphone down where you can speak right into it and speak kind of loudly. If you would give us your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Timmel, and I live at 105 Quiet Refuge Lane. And that's an important address for 2 reasons. First of all, for the last 18 years, it's been exactly that, my quiet refuge after a hard day of teaching, or now that I'm working with the homeless after a hard day walking through the woods trying to feed and house people. So it's a very important place to me. It also, I think, may be in the running for the distinction of being the last affordable house sold in Garner. I got it back just before the real estate boom hit and things started appreciating. So I was lucky to be able to move in there. It is a residential neighborhood. Part of being a quiet refuge is it's a safe place for kids, or it was up until this past year. And I don't want to ladle too much blame on Thompson businesses because they've been good neighbors for 17 years. They have really tried. I do want to apologize for not being able to meet with them at the December meeting, but I was one of the myriad members of the neighborhood who never received an invitation, even though our properties butt right up against that. I would suspect that being in December and the Christmas mailing season might have had something to do with it. I'm also concerned that many of our Latino neighbors were unable to attend because it was held on December 12th, which is the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And anyone familiar with Latin American culture will realize that's a time when they simply can't be out at a business meeting. I have not adversarial remarks because, as I said, they've been good neighbors, but amiable concerns, which include the compatibility, the noise level, the traffic, and what's going on with the affordable housing. In terms of the compatibility, they are zoned L1, we are zoned R2. But if you look at the map as Councilman Singleton has done, it is very clear that we have approximately 20 feet between the back of our houses and the beginning of their property. Now, as an English teacher, I usually assume I know what words mean. So when I heard there would be a sufficient barrier, I was expecting a good probably 5, 10, 15 feet of woodland being preserved. A barrier that would protect our privacy and our safety. Instead, what has happened is it's been clear cut. My yard is one of the luckiest because I'm in a water preservation area and several of the streams run through there, so they haven't been able to clear cut my backyard yet. But if they do, it's a very frightening thought. And for the neighbors who've already lost their trees, as Councilman Singleton says, 4-foot shrubs aren't going to give us any security, privacy, or safety. We need to have the trees reestablished as soon as possible. The trees serve an important part in our neighborhood by providing not only sound barriers from the noise across the street at T&E, that's one of the ways they were good neighbors, is the woodland that we had kept it from being so noisy. It really was a quiet area. For the last year, it's been unbearable. We may have to change the name to Noisy Nuisance Road. Secondly is my concern about the noise. Well, I was just addressing that. I'm going to continue with the compatibility that the R2 designation is supposed to offer single-family homes to be further away from industrial areas. 20 feet is not enough, and that's my property, not theirs. So I'd like them to offset a respectable distance. They've done that for the north, and we in the south neighborhood can't figure out why we're being sort of ignored and discriminated against.
These are very important points. We do ask that each speaker kind of keep it to 3 minutes. We're going on 5. So if you could kind of wrap it up for us.
Okay, I'll try to wrap it up. We're also concerned about the traffic that's existing right now. It used to be because we knew that middle schoolers were riding their bikes and little kids were walking, and we only have sidewalks on one side of the street. and there's no playgrounds or pocket parks for our kids, that we all drove slowly and carefully and respectfully. Now, all day long, huge Mack trucks, convoys of them, are traveling down Quiet Refuge Lane at excessive speeds, far over the 25 miles an hour allowed. We're not sure why or how that started, but part of it was for the completion of Quiet Refuge Lane through.
Yeah, these are very important points. There will be another opportunity to bring these to the Planning Commission
Okay.
if it goes to that next.
I understand. And I think my concern about affordable housing is answered if Habitat for Humanity comes back. But we would like to see another opportunity to address the concerns, particularly the uses, because some of these uses would be egregious for a family neighborhood.
Thank you. And those are the kind of things we certainly hope we can work through in the coming weeks through the Planning Commission and then coming back before this council. So thank you very much for your comments.
Will I have an opportunity to submit information to the Planning Council?
Yes, you can send it to them via email or through our portal, and you can speak at the public hearing that the Planning Commission will have as well. So these are important points that you make. I encourage you and your neighbors to communicate with our planning staff, with it and through them to the developers, et cetera, all important concerns. And this is a tier one. It's a little bit open-ended and many details to be worked out, and those are the kind of details that you're addressing here. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your attention and your interest.
Thank you. And Ms. Jones, do we have any other individuals signed up to speak?
The other individuals were part of the development team, so I don't think they wish to speak.
Okay, so we've heard from the staff, the development team, at least one of the neighbors there. The next step, after we close the hearing, would be to consider referring this case to the Planning Commission for further study, more detailed. At this point, if there's no other questions or comments, Mr.
Yes,
Singleton?
I'd like to follow up. Maybe Mr. Roberts can answer this question. Ms. Timmel said that some of the clear cutting is taking place behind those lots. I don't know if that's true or false, but in the 65-foot buffer, so can you help explain some of this?
Yeah, we basically installed a tree protection fence 65 feet off of that property line on the southern side. But there are areas in there where there weren't any existing trees. So I would imagine if she's looking at her house, if it's in an area that was bare and we cut over there to clear, then it's obviously even more bare now. But there wasn't any grading or cutting within 65 feet of the property line is whatever the existing condition is. But there are some bare areas in there. And then as site plans come in, then those areas will have to be beefed up and increased and vegetation added depending on what type of building goes on a particular respective site plan.
And is the tree protection fence still there, or has it been taken down now?
I think it's still there.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's still there. And I apologize on behalf of the top. I know construction is never pretty, and the site has been opened up and been under construction. It was a mass grade, project over the last year, based over the last year. And there has been a lot of trucks and activity in that area trying to build Quiet Refuge lanes. But now the fact that it's paved, they should be in there seating this week. Should not be any more traffic. Matter of fact, if you drive over there now, there's a chain across Quiet Refuge Lane. We put up a chain today with no trespassing signs. So there should not be any more traffic, construction traffic on Quiet Refuge as part of this project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? So we go. In that case, then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we can have, if there's a second and a motion and a second to refer this to the Planning Commission, then we can have some more discussion. Is there a motion to refer this to the Planning Commission?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Matthews, second by Ms. Behringer. Let's have a voice vote. Council members in favor of referring this to the Planning Commission for further study, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed by saying nay? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. We will refer this to the Planning Commission. There will be another chance for the public to speak. There's always an opportunity for the public to submit more information, more questions, speak directly with planning staff, as well as the developer and their team, and address the concerns that are very reasonable. So that being the case, the motion is carried. This goes to the Planning Commission, and we will move along to new and old business. And now we go back to kind of finish the loop on the first two projects that we talked about. And we'll start out first with number one under the I category of new and old business. That is discussion of Gateway 540 and the conditional rezoning. Our presenter is the Assistant Planning Director, Ms. Erin Joseph.
Thank you. All right, thank you. This is case CZ 24-002, Gateway 540. The applicant has submitted a request to amend our zoning map with a Tier 1 conditional rezoning request from Highway District and Residential 30. Those are Wake County zoning districts to light industrial condition. There's also a limited access highway and Lower Swift Creek conservation overlay districts. The site encompasses 9 parcels along Parish Farm Road, Benson Road, and Cleveland School Road, and Painters Road. There have been 31 possible uses identified out of a potential 41. And it's included in your staff report, the total proffered or narrowed permitted uses for that conditional district. The applicant has also proffered 11 conditions outside of the permitted uses. I won't read everything on the screen, but as a part of those conditions, the applicant has defined certain areas within the site, and you can see that on your screen in the map here, this area map. And so the area for development truly means the entirety of the site. There is a commercial services pod area, which encompasses starting from 600 feet from this boundary down to Cleveland School Road. And with a depth of 300 feet. So this is the commercial services pod, and then the remaining of the site is considered the employment pod area. And within the commercial services pod, the applicant has further restricted the potential uses to those that are listed on your screen. So a total of 15 uses will only be allowed within that commercial services pod area. Within the employment pod, the subject amount of commercial uses in paragraph 5 are permitted within the employment pod. Also, no more than 25% of the gross land area lying within the boundary of the original area for development. Again, that's this entire site. Shall be developed for commercial services uses. And there is also a maximum amount of flex space. So for a period of 10 years following the date of the first certificate of occupancy for the first building within the employment pod, no more than 25% of the gross land area of the employment pod area shall be used for flex space uses. And you have the area that's for development. Again, the commercial services pod that is restricted to certain uses, and also further in the employment pod, The maximum amount of flex space is also conditioned here. So just to give you a further highlight of this, the site and area map. Overall, staff supports a finding of consistency. You have the full consistency review in your staff report. During the Planning Commission meeting, questions and comments pertain to a clarification of the elimination of one of the access points, if there would be an updated traffic impact analysis based on the opening of 540, and also regarding the choices of uses that were determined for the traffic impact analysis. Also, a question was clarified about how the applicant would overcome the challenges of a Tier 1 request and the broad nature of that. So they were able to speak to that. Maximum building and minimum heights. There was a clarifying question regarding residential uses within the site. There will not be any. And that also that when the uses are determined for that site, that maybe the applicant or someone from economic development would come back and update the Planning Commission about the status of this project. So with that being said, the Planning Commission did recommend approval. They found with a modest level of consistency with the community character and also a fairly strong level of consistency with the plan's growth framework. So they did vote to recommend approval, a unanimous vote to recommend approval to council. This evening, we are considering the reasonableness of this request based off of the 6 criteria that you have on your screen. And the next steps would be to find consistency and reasonableness. You do have draft motions within your agenda packet. And what we have highlighted on the screen are 2 options: consistent and reasonable, or consistent but not reasonable. Again, here is a highlighted map of the area for development. I do have the rest of the conditions that they have proffered outside of the ones that we have discussed, if you would like to pull them on the screen as a refresher of the other proffered conditions.
Okay. I'll ask the council if they want to do that. The council has seen this one a couple of times.
Yes.
It was continued a time or 2. It's been to the Planning Commission. We've looked at it since. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation this evening?
The applicant is here. They don't have a formal presentation, so I'll leave the map up, but they are here and would like to speak and answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Yes, would you like to address the council?
Yeah, excuse me, that would be great, Mayor. Members of the council, Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group, 424 Fayetteville Street, Suite 2200, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. Here on behalf of the applicant and the applicant team this evening to discuss this case with you. Joining me tonight are Kurt Berger, Gordon Paulson, and Stuart Paulson. They're the developers of this site. Additionally, Beth Blackman with Timmons is here to answer any questions related to planning and engineering. Mr. Mayor, as you alluded to, this is a zoning case that spent some time at your table before we made our way to the Planning Commission. And we're excited the work that we were able to put in on the front end of that process, because we believe that the work that we put in partnership with you all as a council, continued work with the staff, is what resulted in the unanimous recommendation of approval that we have from the Planning Commission. We believe that the conditions that we crafted with you all in tow properly balanced the need for flexibility, the desire to create an economic development opportunity, while at the same time providing for some reasonable predictability associated with where certain uses were going to be on the site. So as you all are aware, this, in addition to the time we spent at this council table, there's been a lot of time that's gone into this case before we got to you, but we are very excited to be here tonight. We're excited to be a part of the process of opening up Garner's most prized asset from an economic development opportunity standpoint, and we're here to answer any questions that you all may have, but we would certainly respectfully request you all's approval of the case.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments from council at this point? Okay, that being said, we'll kind of close out this portion. We're going to go back, we're going to defer action on this item and go back to the annexation question that we addressed in the earlier public hearing. Just to do this in the proper order, again, before we can rezone, as we've just been talking about, we have to approve an annexation that we heard about earlier. So I'm going to go back in time and rejoin and reopen the hearing there. And as council members, if there is a motion and a second for the annexation, if there is, we can have some more discussion. But at this time, I will ask the council members, is there a motion to adopt the ordinance for annexation of this project?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Vance, second by Mr. Matthews, that we adopt the annexation. If there's no more discussion from council on that topic, we'll ask for a voice vote. Those in favor of approving the annexation for this project, please signify by saying aye.
Mr. Mayor, could we just clarify that that would be adopting ordinance number 2024-5295?
That was the motion Mr. Vance
Yes.
made. Yes, that's a good notation. Thank you for the clarification. That being said, council members in favor of approving the ordinance, to adopt the ordinance for annexation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we can move along to the question of the rezoning that we've just heard some more details about, and again, that we've seen several times here and at the Planning Commission. So now we'll get back to the discussion here about the rezoning, and we'll see if there's a motion to adopt that rezoning, and if there's a motion in a second, then we can have some more discussion. Is there a motion to approve the conditional rezoning?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the town council accept the planning commission's written statement regarding consistency of the zoning amendment request with adopted land use plans detailed in section 3 of the staff report as their own, and I further move that the town council adopt ordinance number 2024-5297 approving rezoning of CZ-24-002 as the request is reasonable in the public interest because the subject property would be more suitable for uses permitted by the proposed district within the town of Garner versus current districts within Wake County.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Matthews, a second by Mr. Singleton in favor of passing this ordinance for the rezoning. Is there any further discussion?
I would just like to thank the developers for coming back when we met the additional times and listening to our concerns and agreeing to the conditions, because everything we put out there, y'all agreed to in conditions and fine-tuned them, so I appreciate y'all doing that.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for the involvement. Thanks for the flexibility and the feedback both ways. This was a good model of working together, a public-private partnership to move our community ahead. Complicated project. That being said, we'll close that discussion. We had a motion, and did we have a second? We did have a second. Okay, we had the motion and by Mr. Matthews, second by Mr. Singleton. I'm going to ask for a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the ordinance for the rezoning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. The motion carries. Ordinance is passed. Thank you, gentlemen. And we'll keep clipping right along here as we go to number 2 in this section, which again is circling back to the Parkway Drive. We heard about the annexation request earlier, and now we're going to get a little more detail from our planner, Thomas Waltersdorf.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for sticking around for me tonight. I'll be presenting General Zoning GZ 24001, 2311 Parkway Drive. So the applicant is the town of Garner for this project. The owner is Pulte Home Company, LLC. This is the general rezoning request for the 0.28 acres discussed earlier in that annexation petition. to rezone that property from R40 watershed Wake County to rural agricultural town of Garner. The property is located at 2311 Parkway Drive. It is aligned with annexation petition ANX 24002. The parcels only to provide emergency fire access into and out of Exchange of 401 and the Brookwood neighborhoods with that gated knockbox. Having the property be incorporated and zoned into the town of Garner will allow us to enforce the use just for emergency access. Staff did find an overall finding of consistency. There were no land use community character criteria to evaluate because the land is otherwise undeveloped, just used for that emergency access. At the Planning Commission, there was a question about the impact on nearby property owners regarding sounds and smells. That was the only question. The Planning Commission did adopt a consistency statement, finding that it was generally consistent with the comprehensive plan criteria. They also adopted a motion to recommend approval to council with a 7-0 unanimous vote. Tonight, you will analyze this petition with the 6 reasonableness criteria there on the screen. For the draft motions, you can find them on page 126 of your agenda packet. You can find it either consistent and unreasonable or consistent and reasonable to approve or to deny tonight. So that concludes my presentation. If you have questions for me or staff, will be here.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation at this point?
We are the applicant. Pulte is here as well. They're not the applicant per se. They are the owner of the property, but we are applying on their behalf.
And I bet Ms. Blackman has something to add.
She may.
Good evening again, Beth Blackman, Timmons Group. I really don't have anything to add. I think we had our conversation in the annexation portion. We're just here in support of staff. Staff took on the rezoning for this. And so all we technically handled was the annexation. But obviously we were the property owner and signed all the appropriate applications for the town to take care of the rezoning. But you have 2 parts, right? You have the annexation and the rezoning for tonight. This is only going to be used for emergency access. It will go both ways. Anyone in Wake County Emergency Services can access it with the knock box. So whether it's a local fire department or Wake County EMS or Garner, everyone Emergency Services, Sheriff Department can all access it and open it up to get through, whether it is to Brookwood or into the Exchange at 401. So it will go both ways. But thank you for your time, your consideration. We appreciate it.
And while you're there, and you're both up, let me ask one question to repeat what Mr. Powell asked earlier. I think you've answered, it does go both ways. He also has some question about accessibility for walkers, bicyclists to get to the other neighborhood or perhaps to greenways. Is that part of this interchange, this interaction here?
That is not currently part of this. The portion of the parcel that is next to Parkway Drive, so the portion where it connects to Parkway Drive is really only about 20 feet wide. And the fire access will be 20 feet wide. So it does get very skinny there. There is more room on the rest of it, but it's all we're proposing is the emergency access.
Will he be able to ride his bicycle through there?
Will be gated. It will be gated.
Gated, okay.
Yes.
That's something we can look at in the future for access. It could be an advantage to the neighbors either side. We'll let you decide.
And there, he was referring to, there is your planned greenway or Wake County's planned greenway that is more along Swift Creek, right? That will be on the other side of their Brookwood neighborhood, so.
Okay, thank you. Well, now I'll ask council members if there's any questions for our applicant, which is us, the town, or the land, or the property owner. Any other questions that you have for them?
No question.
Okay. In that case, then I'm going to suspend this part of the presentation again, going to go back in time to the annexation question that we discussed earlier, because we cannot rezone this until we annex it. So I will ask the council members, is there a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance for the annexation?
So I move to approve adoption of ordinance 20245296.
Okay, there's a motion from Mr. Vance. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Behringer seconds. Is there any other discussion by council? Hearing none, I'll call for a voice vote on the annexation ordinance. Those in favor of approving that ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition by saying nay. Hearing none, the annexation portion passes unanimously. And since that has been approved, we can now move along to the conditional rezoning that we heard some more about there. Since we've just been through the details of that, I will ask council members if there's any other questions or any other discussion you'd like to make about the rezoning that would be naturally following up that annexation. None. Okay, hearing none then, I will ask for, so we just had the motion and the second on that, right? We got a lot of these flying. So that being said, we'll call for a voice vote. All in favor of approving the conditional rezoning, please signify by saying aye.
Mayor, we hadn't had a motion on the rezoning.
Okay,
Wait,
okay,
not
thank you.
yet.
I
We have-
misunderstood. We had so many.
And you have to make the reasonableness statement as well.
Okay. Is there a motion to that effect?
I move that the town council accept the planning commission's written statement regarding consistency of the zoning amendment requests with adopted land use plans detailed in section 3 of the staff report as our own. And I further move that the town council adopt ordinance number 20245298 approving rezoning GZ-24-001 as the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the proposed district is compatible with present zoning and conforming uses on nearby property and with the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you for the motion, Mr. Vance. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Singleton. If there's no more discussion on this item, I will now call for a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the motion to do the conditional rezoning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, the rezoning passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your attention on all of those convoluted decisions we went through, but I believe we got through it in the correct legal order and have made a good decision. Thanks everyone for their participation there. We do have several other items, one important item coming up, another rezoning request. And I think before we launch into that, we will go ahead and take our short recess here, come back for that, and then the conclusion of the meeting with various reports. So let's take a 10-minute recess right here. If you would be back by about 20 till 8. Thank you. Quick recess. We're back. Thank you for your prompt and efficient use of our very short recess there. I want to make sure we were on top of our game for the very exciting proposal coming up next. It's a project we've looked at before. We have a lot of information about. I'm going to kick it right off as we look at the Bethel Green project and hear from Thomas Waltersdorf, our planning staff.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Council, thank you again. This is case CZMP 2307, known as Bethel Green. The applicant is Foxfield Land Partners. The owner is Thomas and Jennifer Cox. This is a Tier 2 conditional rezoning request to rezone 138.52 acres from R2 to R8 conditional. This is for the development of 322 single-family detached units. The site is on the southern side of New Bethel Church Road between the existing Glen Creek and Oak Manor subdivisions. The applicant has proposed zoning conditions restricting the range of permitted uses and added commitments above and beyond the requirements of the UDO. They are proposing, the existing zoning is R2, low density, single family homes. Currently, there is a single family detached home and the rest of the property is vacant. There is also that Lower Swift Creek Conservation Overlay District, which will limit single family residential development to no more than 30% impervious surface. The context of the site in general, it's a mix of R2, R4 conditional, and RA surrounding the site. As we all know, this corner of Garner is undergoing increased development with several residential projects under construction and under review. Water and sewer utilities to the neighborhood will be connected through the adjacent Oak Manor development. The applicant is proposing R8 conditional. They've narrowed the 18 possible uses to just one, which is single-family detached homes only. Collectively, they've proposed a maximum of 322 dwelling units. You'll see the breakdown there in lot size and number. Since you've seen the project last, they did offer an additional lot size of 80 feet width. There are 12 of those lots. That is new, obviously, since the last time you've seen this, and they've reduced the other two number of lots for the smaller sizes down. The total density dwelling units per acre of the site now would sit at 2.32 dwelling units per acre. In addition to the previously proposed conditions, there are two new ones. This is the biggest one. Number 21 deals with a minimum of 10 affordable residential restricted medium income affordable housing units. These will be constructed on site and sold at a sales price that's calculated based on that 80% AMI for the Raleigh metro area. It will be for the first sale of the site. It's going to be a restrictive covenant that is deed restricted. The applicant is proposing that they be throughout the site with no more than 2 permitted on any individual street. Detailed questions regarding this condition will probably defer to the applicant, but I wanted to present the full condition there for you. The other condition that they are proposing was in response to residents nearby in the Glen Creek neighborhood. You'll see they're proposing a one-way access here with a bump out. There's going to be a mini roundabout there. The traffic from Glen Creek can travel into and through Bethel Green, but there will not be traffic allowed into Glen Creek from Bethel Green. That'll be a one-way access. And you'll also see that the larger lot size product there of those 80-foot wide lots, the 12 lots there are closest to those existing homes in Glen Creek. So that is the full master plan proposal. Again, there is 138.5 acres of R8. We mentioned the reduced lot numbers down to 322 units. There will be 13.9 acres of open space required. 25% must be active space. That open space can be a combination of conservation and recreation space. Their conservation space includes the riparian buffer areas and conservation buffer areas. And their recreation sites include qualifying open areas, amenities, pedestrian trails with connections, and to a new segment of public greenway. Staff is able to support an overall finding of consistency with the request as revised. The full detail of consistency review is attached to your staff report. Some questions and comments from our Planning Commission meeting. There were questions regarding traffic and how improvements can be made. There was appreciation for the layout of the site, distribution of the open spaces and pocket parks. Questions about sewer connections. There was a question regarding the time frame for the affordable housing units and if they were to remain for a certain amount of time. There was a question about the greenway connections, appreciation for the affordable housing units, and comments about first floor primary bedrooms and questions over lot sizes and plan consistency. Planning Commission did adopt a consistency statement finding that it was consistent with our Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan. And they passed a motion by a 7-0 unanimous vote to recommend approval to Town Council. Tonight, you will analyze this proposal based on the 6 criteria of reasonableness on the screen. Page 158 of your agenda packet has the draft motions for this proposal, for this rezoning, one of which you can find it consistent and reasonable to approve or consistent and unreasonable to deny. Again, that is the overall picture of the master plan. I'll be here, staff will be here, and the applicant has a presentation as well, and they can answer any questions after theirs.
Hey, thank you very much. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group, still at 424 Fayetteville Street, Suite 2200, Raleigh, 27601. Here with me tonight is Kurt Berger, Gordon Paulson, and Stuart Paulson. They are the proposed developers of the site. Also, Beth Blackman with Timmons Group, who can answer questions related to the planning that's gone into this development. We're excited to be back in front of you tonight. We had a great conversation with you all the first time we were here. We got very valuable feedback that our team immediately went to work on, whether it was feedback from the council. As you recall, there were a couple of neighbors who showed up who lived along Altamont Court who had questions related to the case and expressed some concerns related to transitions. And I'm going to walk through a little bit the changes that have been made since that time. I'm not going to bore you with representing the entire case. I'm really just want to focus on kind of what's changed since the last time we were here. Certainly, we're here to answer any questions that you may have related to the entire case, but I really just kind of want to focus on what has changed. And I don't know, is this on?
It's usually turned off on the side. There he goes.
Beautiful. Okay. So this is the master plan. And as staff alluded to, as Thomas alluded to, we made changes in this bottom section of the development. So where I've thrown the oval onto the screen there, and you'll have to oblige me of my fairly rudimentary PowerPoint skills, but I did my level best to try to focus in on these areas that really got the closest consideration, and I want to walk through with you all the changes that were made in that area. First, this is Altamont Court coming into the site here. And this is a mini roundabout with the one-way street section. So this is that condition that was put up on the screen related to the access drive. As you may recall, when we presented to you at the public hearing, one of the things that we had told the neighbors during our most recent neighborhood meeting with them, which was a few months ago at this point, was that we were going to see if we could make that a gated access. But what we discovered was that the length of that driveway coming into our site exceeded UDO standards. And so as a result of that, we weren't in a position to be able to put in a gate. As much as we may want to, as much as the neighbors may want that gate, we just weren't permitted by the terms of the UDO to be able to do that. However, through some creative planning with Ms. Blackman as well as Mr. Triesenberg, apparently this has been done in at least one other occasion, that is changing the access as you leave Altamont Court, coming out of our site, and necking it down into a one-way traffic movement when you get into our community. So what that means is they will be able to use our site to access the streets in our site as well as the streets to the neighboring community to our north, but none of the traffic that's being generated by our site will be able to move through their community. And so we were pleased to be able to do that, to be able to continue to work with the staff in an effort to find a way to alleviate any potential burden that this development may have on those neighbors. Additionally, as was mentioned, after the hearing we had, we revised the lot count to reduce some of the smaller lots and to increase the size and create roughly 10,000 square foot lots, 12 of those, and those are the ones you see in this area. So you've got a 12,000 square foot or 10,000 square foot lot in this location, and then lining this property line is where the remainder of those 10,000 square foot lots are going to be located. So what we did, again, based on the feedback that we heard, in addition to the feedback that you heard from the community relative to concerns associated with traffic, one of the questions was how many lots are going to be backing up to us. So what my client did with the planning team was try to figure out a way, is there a better way to provide transitions? And so we created essentially a new class of single family lots within this community, larger than anything that we were here with you all last time. And we're able to locate those along the boundary in an effort to continue to provide what we believe to be our appropriate transitions between our development. As you may recall, the community to our north has lot sizes that are generally similar to ours, although maybe a little bit smaller on balance. And the community to our south is much larger lots. And so what we've been doing this entire time is really making sure that what we are doing on our site is providing for appropriate transitions between those two lot types. So those were the primary changes from a plan design standpoint since you all last saw the case. Additionally, this is the affordable housing condition that we discussed, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to the case. I will tell you I've done a lot of work in this market for a long time, although not much in Garner, but I'm happy to be here working with you all. I'm a huge proponent of affordable housing on the personal point. I enjoyed the benefit of it when I was in college as well as law school, and so certainly something that I was really thrilled that my client was able to provide as part of this case. And I will tell you, having done a lot of zoning work in this market, you often see zoning conditions related to housing affordability in the apartment setting. It's a little bit easier to manage because you have a management company. It's not nearly as often as you get it with an ownership product, with a single family detached lot. And so I want to give my client credit for hearing the feedback that you all had relative to wanting to see some housing affordability, wanting to make sure that the quality and the value is going to be Garner quality and Garner value, but at the same time providing for that 80% AMI. And so, as is indicated in the condition, at least 10 of the homes that are going to be sold in this community will be at the 80% AMI qualification level. There will be a deed restriction that acknowledges that, so that will be enforced at that time, and there's a certification process that goes on during the permitting of those individual lots. So again, happy to be able to work on that, and happy to answer any questions relative to that particular condition. Otherwise, the balance of the plan generally remains the same. We're very proud of the plan that's been put together. Candidly, we got some really positive feedback from the Planning Commission associated with the scattering of the open spaces, but also the robust amount of open spaces, and then also the private trails and the public trails that we have. As you may recall, we have close to 2 miles of public and private trails wired just into our site. And that's independent of any greenway that will ultimately be located along the back of the site. So we're very excited about this development. We believe it's going to be highly complementary to what's going on in the Garner area. It will be embraced by the community. We believe what we have done in the terms of the conditions that are being offered with this case have been responsive to neighborhood concerns, responsive to council concerns, and responsive to community concerns associated with things like housing affordability. So we would respectfully request you all's approval of the case. We look forward to moving forward on it and here to answer any questions that you all may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the information. And let's see what questions or comments we might have from council here. Mr. Vance?
Yes, I'd like to say first, thank you for condition number 2021, in reference to the affordable housing piece, and much needed. And it sounds like you all were listening to the conversations relative to affordable housing. And as we work to wrap our arms around affordable housing here, it's good to have developers who are partners who are listening to us and incorporating our thought process into your plans. Question in reference to the affordable housing, will they be dispersed throughout and not clustered together?
That's exactly right. So no individual street will have more than 2 affordable units on that street. The idea with every affordable housing opportunity, what you're looking to do is to create mixed income opportunities, as you're aware, Mr. Vance. And so the idea is we will intersperse them throughout the neighborhood. You won't know whether it's an affordable unit you're driving by or a standard market rate unit. So no more than 2 units on any street within the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Behringer?
Just a comment, I appreciate the work that you've done and that you heard us and that we are seeing something different and something that meets the needs more than what we saw before. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Singleton?
Just to clarify on this condition, Mr. Barron, and it says following the sale, once the affordable unit is sold, the developer has no further obligations. So if that person who bought the affordable unit sells it, they can sell it at whatever they choose to sell it.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Matthews?
No question. Particularly drove by there this weekend, and you guys are going at it out there, moving a lot of dirt around and getting it ready. And thank you for listening, and we work together.
I'm sorry, sir, I have to interrupt. We're not on site doing any work on this project.
Yeah, not yet.
Well, what's that one that runs right through there?
Pulte is.
Yeah, right.
They're around the
But
corner.
there's a lot of development going on out there, so I got ahead of myself, sorry. But
No
what
worries.
they were doing, looking good.
Yeah. We
But
hope
thank
to
you
be
for-
doing that at some point, though,
Yeah.
for sure.
But thank you for working with us on this project, and I think good will come from it, especially from what you're going to build, as well as those police, fire, and rescue, and teachers have the opportunity to have a home out there too, which is most important. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent, excellent. There was a lot of work put into this. We've heard this a couple of times before the council here and then back to planning. A lot of dialogue. Clearly, the developers have been listening, not just the affordable housing, very important, not just the one-way street from Glen Creek, but my little pet project, give me some houses I don't have to go upstairs. And you've got those available as the people order them. You've pledged to 10%. And I hope you sell 50% to old people like myself, because you're there to sell houses, and we're looking for places to live, and my colleagues, my generation as well. So hats off to you on listening and implementing that stuff. We do appreciate it. So that pretty much concludes our hearing on that. If we have a motion and a second, then we can have a little more discussion if we want to. Is there a motion to adopt the ordinance on this rezoning?
I move that the town council accept the planning commission's written statement regarding consistency of the zoning amendment request with adopted land use plans detailed in section 3 of the staff report as our own. And I further move that the town council adopt ordinance number 2024-5299, approving rezoning CZ MP 2307, as the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the proposed district is conditioned to be compatible with present zoning and conforming uses on nearby property and with the character of the neighborhood and the available sewer, water, and transportation infrastructure, stormwater facilities, and other necessary infrastructure are suitable and adequate for the proposed uses.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Ms. Behringer. There's a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. That being said, is there any other discussion we want to have on this issue?
I'll just make a comment. I appreciate the efforts the developers have done, but as I told them previously, that's still too dense for me. 322 is an improvement from what it was, but 222 would be better. And I appreciate you putting in some big lots. It's still going to impact New Bethel Church Road with some 3,000 average daily trips. So it's still a lot of area it's still a very dense development. And someplace down there needs to stay green. And as I call this, the ruler or the yardstick, because that's like you drop a ruler or yardstick on the floor on the ground. I mean, that's what it is. It's long and narrow, but that would be nice to be green all the time. But anyway, that's my feelings.
Okay, yeah, a lot of work went into it, a lot of creativity. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance for the rezoning on this. And I think I'll call for a voice vote on this one. All in favor of approving this ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay?
Nay.
Okay, 3 ayes and 1 nay. The motion passes. And thank you very much for your attention on all of this. Thanks, staff, for pulling this together and working it through the process. It's always a lot of work. That being said, we'll move along to committee reports, and I'll recognize council members to make a report from any committee they're assigned to. I'll start with Mr. Matthews.
Well, I got one from the Veterans Committee. Of course, this is on our site and all, promoting Veterans Day coming up here, which is a very important thing, November the 11th. Be at Aversboro Baptist Church here in Garner, starting at 10:30. We've got a great keynote speaker, and of course the mayor will be welcoming everybody, and the Garner Magnet High School Wind Ensemble, and it's, as usual, it's held right there at the church, and it's always a special occasion, and everybody's invited, and hope they'll show up, as well as the memorial at the park will be open for guided tours out there for those who want to go down and take a look, see at that.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Singleton, committee reports?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Behringer?
Yes, sir, I have one. Public Arts Committee, we're moving forward with getting some proposals for some public art sculpture on the property at the corner of Avery Street and West Garner Road. So it's looking like we might see that before too much longer.
Excellent, excellent progress there. It won't look anything at all like the old house that was crumbling
No, it
over.
won't.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vance?
No report tonight.
No committee reports. Let's move to manager reports. Ms. Miller?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of council. I was going to mention the Veterans Day observance event, but Mr. Matthews has shared that with you and reminded our community about this great event that we hosted next Wednesday on November 11th. I did just want to share a quick update with council. Early voting ended at Avery Street Rec Center on Saturday. Reports from the Board of Election indicated we had over 20,000 people who voted early at that particular location. So in the spirit of tomorrow being the official election day, I just wanted to share with you the turnout that we have seen as part of early voting at Avery Recreation Center. So those are all my updates this evening. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Questions?
Okay, hearing no questions, we'll move along to attorney reports.
Just briefly, just a reminder that the Planning Commission meeting will be on Tuesday, the 12th, due to the holiday. So I know many people are accustomed to coming that second Monday, but it will actually be on a Tuesday evening in November.
Okay, thank you. And we can run back through council members for council reports outside of the committee reports. That's Ms. Behringer.
I do have one. There is at the corner of Broughton Street and Garner Road. It would be the northeast corner. There is a pipe. It's a I don't know what kind of pipe it is, but it's leaning sideways. Looks like it's been hit some time ago and just never been straightened up. And there are other locations, at least in the North Garner area, that have similar pipes like that. I don't know what kind of pipe it is. It's not very big around, but it is leaning over, and it's very unsightly. So if we could get
Ms. Behringer, we'll have Public Works go take a look at that and see what's going on and see how we can address the issue.
Thank you.
Okay, other council reports in general, Mr. Singleton?
I thank Public Works for doing their work. I see them out there with the yard waste pickup and the 4 tires. They can get Actually, I did see somebody with 4 tires stacked by their mailbox. Anyway, they're working hard out there, and people are appreciative of it. And because it's been, after the hurricane, it's been so dry, a lot of leaves are on the ground. So I think they've already started that process, but there are leaves everywhere now. So I know that All-Star will be working on that and have a big run here in the next month or so. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Matthews.
Yes, sir. Be careful what you ask for. I got this in my water bill. So sign up for the Town of Garner's e-newsletter and stay in the know. So it came in. So that,
Right. Saw it too.
I mean, took them 3 hours to make that happen. That was very impressive.
So want to recognize and thank our communications director, Rick Mercer, for that. He and his team do a great job of being creative and looking for opportunities to share with our residents ways they can stay in touch with the town and get information. And so that's one of the many strategies that they use.
It was very good. Secondly, I went by Lake Benson Park 2 or 3 times a day, and they are paving the entranceway and have got it lined off with arrows and what have you. It just goes past the main entrance, and it goes back into the regular road, but it really looked good, and they knocked that out today. And lastly, Mr. Singleton sent me something on wind phones. For you don't know what wind phones are, it was on WRAL, and he can share a lot more with it, but it's designed for being a Veterans Memorial Park or what have you. It's a quiet like booth, and there's phone in it to those having issues, need some quiet time just to sit there and think about things. And yield it back over to Gray if he wouldn't mind talking about it.
Yeah, I saw this on WRAL. A mom, her son was a veteran, had served, and when he got back over here, he had brain cancer, most aggressive type, and did not survive. And she'd heard about these from Japan, these wind phones, and looks like an old style phone booth. It doesn't look like a phone, but let me rephrase that. Somebody who was in the phone business. It looks superior to that. I'll send this story to you. But it's a place where people can go and meditate. In this particular case, it had some information about him and his life, but you can do it for just in general. And it's a place where you're not at a bench where other people can see you. You're kind of by yourself. And I'll send it. I had never heard of it until I saw the story and had to see it 3 or 4 times. So I said to Mr. Matthews, this is something maybe we could put down near Lake Benson Park, near the memorial, because it didn't have to be just for veterans. It can be for anyone. But it was something they do in Japan, and they've got one at the Transitions Life Center here in Raleigh now. They built one. This particular one was dedicated in her son's honor. So I just thought it was something interesting we may want to consider doing. And maybe work through the Veterans Committee or do this or do that and look for get donations to do it. But anyway, I'll send you the story and let you look at it, because it took me a couple times to look at it and think, that's a pretty unique opportunity to allow people to be with their feelings and be more alone than just sitting down there on the bench. So I'll send it to you.
I appreciate that. And so when you get it, please look at it, think about it, give us your feedback. And I think it would be an excellent addition out there, since Garner's the first on a lot of things, but we are a veteran-friendly community, and I think it would be a great opportunity, because like I said, I go out there a lot of time, I just sit on the bench thinking about things, but then people are coming through, and it's not the quiet time you're looking unless it's a certain part of the day. So you all think about it, and we'll take it from there. How does that sound?
Interesting.
I appreciate Mr. Singleton sending that to me. That it meant a lot. That's all I got, sir.
Excellent ideas.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more thing I'd just like to mention. I'd forgotten about it, but I saw on the news, I believe last night, that every week, I don't know how many weeks it's been going on, but there's a busload of people coming, Amish people coming from Pennsylvania. I believe they quoted 56 people to the western part of our state, and they're building tiny homes for people that have lost their homes in the hurricane. That's a very moving testimony.
Neighbors who know each other and help each other out. We're glad to have them around, glad to have them. Any other observations, comments from staff? Questions? Well, I may be willing to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
What is wrong with me?
A motion by Ms. Behringer and a second by Mr. Matthews. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? And that concludes our meeting for tonight. Thank you all for coming. Be sure you vote tomorrow if you haven't already. Thank you.